I'm James A. Bolen, Jr. I go by the nickname of Jay. I was born November the 15th, 1937, and I've lived almost all of my life in Alexandria, Louisiana. Well, we all have traumas, but I just turned 5 years old and managed to start a fire in a grass field next to the house on Harvard Street in Alexandria, Louisiana, and it was in January, and the wind caught it, and I just happened to be wearing some cowboy chaps that a neighbor had given to me for my 5th birthday, which was less than 2 months before, and unfortunately it was in 1943, and it was flammable. So 5 years old, has both legs burning, he starts running, and my mother came out of the house and rolled over me to put out the fire, and I spent some months at Baptist Hospital in Alexandria, which they didn't know what to do. And they did what's called SITZ, S-I-T-Z baths. And they finally figured out that there was a specialist in New Orleans by the name of Herman Metz, M-E-T-Z, who was starting to do skin grafts as a result of World War II veterans that are already starting to get burns in World War II. So they sent me down there, and I stayed there for almost 2 years, undergoing a lot of surgeries. As a result of the trauma of that, I started reading a lot, and I like to read, enjoyed reading, and I think that was the good thing that happened as a result of being there. I went to Rugg Grammar School, which was, the building had only been open for about 4 years, and it was the new public school. Of course, we thought it was the best. And for the first grade, 2nd grade, and 3rd grade, I had a leather a boot that covered my ankle that was leather. It had a metal brace that came up almost to just below my knee to try to straighten out the club foot. And when you are that young and you have other kids that want to make fun of it, well, the highlight of the first 3 years was, since I was also on crutches, I took a crutch and managed to spear the guy mocking me. I caught him right in the gut with the end of the crutch, so managed to defend for myself at an early age. But beyond that, when I got to the 6th grade at Rugg, that was the first year that we were given the opportunity of being in debate. And that was my first experience of being in a formal debate with somebody else, learning the rules of debate. And I was able to see that that was a lot of fun. And I just started reading books when I was in the 5th grade about Clarence Darrow and some of the trials that had been famous in the early part of the 20th century, Sacco and Vanzetti, and the Scopes trial, the monkey trial where they fired the school teacher for teaching evolution and that sort of thing. And I started reading and determining that debating and the search for the truth I found to be very interesting. And as a result of getting those initial tools in the 6th grade, then when I got to Bolton High School 2 years later, because it started in the 8th grade back at that time, this would have been in the fall of 1952, where you stayed at high school for your 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. Bolton had one of the best debate programs in the state of Louisiana. And they had a number of state champions in the years before I got there, including the year I was in the 8th grade. And so I and a number of my friends started with the debate when we were in the 8th grade. And we stayed in the debate program for all 5 years at Bolton High School, and managed to, when we were in our junior year, we won the state high school debate championship. So those were the development of skills that I think also led me into wanting to become a lawyer. And then when I got out of Bolton, my friends, most of them were going to LSU in Baton Rouge. There was no LSU-A, so Went to LSU, and in addition to joining a social fraternity, joined the debate team and stayed on the debate team for all 4 years in undergraduate school. No, I really thought I wanted to be a criminal defense lawyer. I mean, that's the cases that I had read in grammar school and high school, the Clarence Darrow things, and that seemed to be exciting, and you had people's lives that were at stake. And I thought that that would be something that would be interesting to go into. So it was law school like any undergraduate school. You take a general courses and all sort of stuff. And there was only one criminal law class, one semester, which was required. And so when I got out of law school, you start looking for a job, and you take whatever job that, if you want to be back in Alexandria, you take whatever's available. And it just so happened that a friend of my father's, his law partner had suddenly died of a heart attack, and he had an opening. So I went with him, and much to my shock, he had nothing to do with criminal law. Another attorney in Alexandria happened to see me in court doing some really piddling thing, and he needed somebody to go into as a young attorney in his practice. It was just him and another lawyer. And so he asked the chief deputy clerk something about me. And fortunately, I'd worked for several summers under her, getting her guidance, so she gave me a glowing recommendation. So I went with that firm, and they didn't do any criminal law either. And there again, one day in court, doing, in my opinion, some piddling thing, guy from another firm who just had their young lawyer decide to go to tax school in New York City. They needed a young lawyer, and he seemed to be impressed with whatever I was doing in court. And we had only 2 judges at the time for the 9th Judicial District Court. He happens to go to the only one of the 2 that knew anything about me. I had been the best friends of that judge's son, spent a lot of time at his house, so obviously he gave me a glowing report. So starting in 1966, I think, or early 67, I started doing insurance defense work, which had nothing to do with criminal law. And so I started learning the job from the ground up of what I did for more than 50 years. Insurance defense of products liability manufacturers, insurance defense of workers' compensation cases, insurance defense of emergency room providers, just learning from the ground up. I had a lot of defense work, workers' comp cases that I didn't even take the course in law school. Had to learn that from the ground up. But as a result of being in that firm, I got appointed to what they call pro bono, appointed by the court to represent my first accused criminal. And then I got, for the first time, to get a taste of criminal law. And I found that I didn't like it at all. I was able to take time to run for the counsel at large seat. So I ran for that seat, and I won that seat, and I was able to run for re-election 3.5 years later, whatever it was, and got elected again. Well, I did think that I wanted to retire, and started in 2012, started slowing down. And then they letting the cases become fewer and fewer, and then by 2014, for over the period of years, 2013, 2014, I had taken a lot of my time to write. I wrote the history of Boy Scouting in Central Louisiana. I wrote the history of Bolton High School. I wrote the history of public education in Central Louisiana. I wrote some with my oldest granddaughter, Genevieve. When she was about 8, we started exchanging stories about Johnny Lockenboy, and she would sit by my side, and I would type on the keyboard. And I used the Johnny Lockenboy character that my father had used to tell stories to my brother and me when we were in grammar school. So we made up stories about Johnny Lockenboy, and then I got that self-published and sent her a copy. She would tell me the story, and then I'd try to change things around so it would be in some kind of an order. Then, given the opportunity in 2015 to start doing medical malpractice defense work again, I started handling those cases again, and that's kept me active all throughout 2016, 2015, 2016, 2017, and I'm sure at the current rate I'll be kept busy for 2018, and we'll see how it goes after that. Well, I was given the opportunity in 1992 when LSU started their program for their juniors who had finished their junior year, who were about to enter their last year in law school. They set up a required course that was in conjunction with the National Institute of Trial Advocacy in the summer of 1992. And you become an ad hoc member of the faculty of LSU Law School. And they invited certain lawyers and certain judges from around the state of Louisiana to be the teachers. And I was fortunate to be in part of that first teaching group. And what the purpose of it is to try to teach some trial skills to the seniors in law school, so that if they got out of law school, they'd be able to go in the courtroom and know something about what's going on. What is proper evidence? How do you use proper questions on direct examination to a witness? What are the proper questions to cross-examination, to cross-examine a witness? What are the proper questions for the lawyer to ask on rebuttal? How do you get an object like a bat or a ball or a medical transcript into evidence? These are things in law school you're taught. These are exhibits, but how do you get them into evidence? There's a procedure that you go through that needs to be taught. So I stayed a part of that faculty from 1992, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, sometime around 2008 or 9. Then I just got tired of it for a while and didn't do it. And then in 2016, I was invited to come back to the panel to teach again, and they told me they had changed the format. They'd changed the problem and changed it all. So I found the changes to be exciting and wanted to be a part of it again. But unfortunately, I ended up having to have surgery in 2016 and had to cancel almost at the last minute. I got invited back last year, 2017, so that was the first year I taught in several years, and I really enjoyed it. And occasionally I will see some of the law students that had taught over that long period of years. 2 occasions I actually had cases where they were the attorney on the opposite side. So if I'm invited back this year, I plan to accept and continue to do that. I think there are numerous ways to serve other than just being a lawyer. And if all of us can work together to be a part of that kind of lawyering, I think it'll serve society well. I think the proudest accomplishment would be just to do a good job and to have a reputation of being ethical and professional and being prepared in every case, and then having a life other than the law.